Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about a cool fall blast of air that is going to be coming into the United States in about 5 to 10 days time frame. But in the meantime, there is definitely going to be a lot of heat to deal with, so we will have to go through that first. But there definitely is an increasing chance for a nice cool fall blast of air across this very same areas that are right now dealing with a lot of heat and hot weather. So let's jump right into that. So I'll start off by looking at the GFS weather model. It is probably the one that actually, as of recently, in my opinion, has been doing a lot better of a job than the European model. And notice that, yeah, unfortunately, there is quite a bit of heat right now currently across the United States, especially across the middle central United States, extending all the way into the East Coast. A lot of heat. There is a little bit of cooler towards the Dakotas and into southern Canada, but you can see that it is pretty weak. But it eventually does move into the areas that are dealing with the very strong heat. Doesn't cool things off in a major way. Really, honestly, you could just attribute this cool weather that you see right here, this anomaly, to pretty much cloud cover. And that's really where the cool weather has only been, where it's cloudy. Otherwise, it's been a very, very warm pattern. Notice, though, as we get into early next week, we see the heat potentially re-intensify, especially across the upper Midwest and much of the eastern United States. So there definitely still will be probably another period of heat in between now, the current period of heat, and the cool off that I'm talking about in the title of today's video. Do note though, by end of July, and that's what I was talking about, that 5 to 10 day time frame. At this point, the models, it's a wide range of days because the models at this point are still in fair disagreement about when exactly this will happen. Notice that we see a resounding push of cool air that isn't just attributed to cloud cover. And notice that it sticks around for quite a while into the last days of July. You can see this cool air, while not strong at first, as it works its way into the central United States. You can see some of the anomalies, especially during the day, are going to be quite chilly. Now again, this is still a decent bit out. It's 192 hours out, so this is definitely not something that is set in stone. But it is not, as I like to call it, the la la land of weather models. It is not something that has just appeared in one weather model run. It has been appearing for quite a few days now, and it's something I wanted to address. Look at these daytime temperatures and the contrast that it makes. So you could see Kansas potentially in the 90s, even hundreds. One state north of it in Nebraska is 60s and 70s. So almost a 40-degree difference, in just maybe a 200 mile distance. And notice that the southeast kind of gets compressed into that heat wave, but it does seem that this cool air will make its way further south than just the central United States. And as I push this forward into, so this is the last day of July, August 31st into August 1st, notice a lot of New England also dealing with quite a cool weather. At this point, the southeast also cooling off, or at least that heat backing off to really just portions of the peninsula of Florida mainly, and into southern Alabama and extreme southern Georgia. And you can see that, yeah, August 1st, August 2nd, this cold air, it's stubborn, and some of these anomalies are pretty strong. What's interesting, and I've noticed this in the past few years, this isn't just this summer, is that the nighttime anomalies, that for some reason nights are warmer compared to average. While the days kind of have stayed more normal, it's the nights that for some reason have been warmer, at least compared to a 30-year average, and I don't know why. Maybe someone has some theories in the comments, but I can't really put my finger on it. I tried doing some research on it, but I don't know, maybe it's something to do with like the urban heat island effect of larger cities, but it occurs on a large scale. Regardless, after that, the pattern becomes more chaotic, and again, you can see kind of the cold air probably resorts to more being around where the cloud cover is. There are some signs. You can see the GFS shows in a really, really strong cold blast into early August there, but whether or not that will happen remains to be seen. At this point, I would say that is la la land of models, and don't take that seriously. I want to now take a look at the European model. So this is a slightly different model from the GFS. Again, I don't like it as much as a GFS. It used to be the opposite. I used to prefer the European, but this past winter and this past spring, the European just has done a poor job, in my opinion. And do note that, again, there is heat and potentially resurgence of this into early next week, but that cold air, you can see Monday, Tuesday, is starting to form across southwestern portions of Canada and northwestern portions of the United States, Montana, North Dakota. But yeah, the heat could be pretty oppressive. So unfortunately, it does look like there may be another wave of heat. But before we lose all hope, you can see that cool air does come in. So again, European and GFS are in agreement. So that is good. That is something you'd always want to see when it comes to forecasting any events of weather with somewhat of predictability, is with these two weather models agreeing. And again, notice that the night times aren't as cool. They're still a little cooler than average, but it's really the daytime where the anomalies show up quite extensively. Again, maybe that's to do with cloud cover, but in this case, I mean, look, the showers, unless this is going to be like a stratus filled day, which doesn't look like it. There's a high pressure that's usually not stratus favorable, and the precipitation looks pretty lackluster. So, yeah, I don't know what to attribute that to. I don't know if anyone does. But you notice that that cool air does stick around for again the last bit of July and into the early part of August, and then it kind of does start squeaking away, and the warmth does seem to come back in. Again, the GFS did show that massive cool off. Whether or not that second one will happen remains to be seen. At this point, we are just monitoring this first one, and it's going to be occurring into late July into early August. Do note that these are just two models, right? Individual models. So I want to look at Ensemble. So this is basically the GEFS Ensemble. It is a conglomeration of different models in the GFS family to give us a better view that is more averaged compared to looking at just one model. And notice again, in the meantime, really the only areas of cool are where there's rain, where there are showers, and cloud cover. Otherwise, it's warm. It's very warm. And again, potentially that could build into a really strong heat wave into next early week, starting across the Midwest before driving into the Southeast. But right behind that, though, we have that cool off. And you can see that the ensembles are also showing that cool blast of air. It will feel quite cold in some of these areas. Look at these temperatures shaded, right? We'll go from being nights in the 70s and 80s and days almost in the hundreds to in the 50s in the night. So definitely chilly. It's definitely going to be noticeable. Very, very noticeable, which is good. A lot of people I feel like have been sick with this really hot summer. And notice that the GEFS stick this around for around a few days into August, that first week into August, and then it kind of withers away. Still maintaining a cooler footprint across the eastern United States, but that remains to be seen whether or not that sticks around. Now let's look at the EPS, which is basically the ensemble for the European models. And again, let's take a look at the 2-meter temperature anomalies. And right now, you can see it's showing that heat. It's probably over-exaggerating some of that cool air right now across the northern United States. It probably thinks there's a lot more shower activity than there actually is. And that's the problem I've been having with the European, that whenever there's a cold front, whenever there's a system, it always seems to pump out way more precipitation, way more coverage than there actually is. And this is probably why it's contributing to it being a lot cooler than it actually is on the map. So that's why, again, I prefer the GEFS as of lately. The GFS, anything of GFS is, in my opinion, better than European products. Regardless, we'll look at the European one. And notice that we see that cool off, again, right on the heels of this really, really big warm-up, potentially, across the southeast and central United States. So, yeah, you know, you may be watching this or thinking about this video once you watched it today, on Monday of next weekend, being like, where is this cool off? It is incredibly hot here. Well, you just have to wait a little bit of time, and that cool off will eventually come. You could see on Tuesday and Wednesday spilling into the lower Midwest. Again, the nights staying anomalously warm, but it's really the days that are going to be cool. Nights eventually also cool off to at least normal, but the footprint of cool air is definitely going to be stronger during the day, which I guess is nicer because a lot of people are outside during the day, not the night. But if someone wanted to open up the windows, they may be surprisingly surprised that it's not as cool as you'd expect. And notice the European kind of also sticks that cool air around for a while, but it's diminishing in its footprint. So in terms of that isn't in terms of the weather anomaly of temperatures. Now, in terms of the precipitation, it will be just as unfortunate for areas that are drier across, say, southeast and central United States. Thankfully, there aren't that many. A lot of these areas are drought-free. There are a few patches in Illinois and Michigan. Because this pattern, while it will cool off, it will also dry out. Notice right now it is above average precipitation across much of the Midwest, upper Midwest, southeast, drier. But then as this cool blast of air comes in, some of this footprint at least disappears or shifts off towards the west. You could see that the European is keeping it surprisingly wet, which again is probably wetter than it actually will be because the European has liked to do that. So I want to take a look at the GEFS. And let me look at the new model run since that one fully came in. And you can see it really shows a dark green footprint, and it kind of shows that fading away as we get into the early portions of August there. Whether or not they will last long, who knows? If the heat is to come back, so will probably the precipitation. But you can see definitely a noticeable decrease. And in terms of the GFS itself, notice that the total accumulated precipitation, most of that, let me run through this, is added in the next 150 hours. And after that, it's a lot less. Let me show you the MSLP and precipitation pattern footprint. Notice right now, right? Shower clusters, thunderstorms, almost every day across the Midwest. There's that low pressure that could potentially be pumping the heat wave for next week out ahead of that cool off. And once that cold front kind of sweeps through, you could even see a little bit of snow there across extreme northern portions of Quebec there, which at this point isn't too unusual this time of the year. But notice that we have a high pressure, and all this precipitation gets shifted towards the south. So it will be drier for the Midwest and Northeast, but wetter for the south central United States. So I guess it's relative. But again, if the heat is to come back, which some of the models are showing that, probably so will the moisture, and it seems as if the GFS does favor that. You could see showing potentially some larger systems developing early August. You know, I wouldn't say it's fall-like at this point yet, but the jet stream may be dipping a little lower than, you know, instead of staying only by the Arctic Circle, it might go a few hundred miles south with a bigger system, and you can see it supports some larger storms there. And with that, potentially, obviously, more precipitation if that were to come to fruition. So that is just like an interesting side detail I wanted to point out. But regardless, for now, yes, it's pretty warm across much of the United States into the end of July. But then the last few days, and especially early August, there will be a pretty robust cool down. So I'll catch you all guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.